Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to a book haul. Technically, this is several book hauls, but it primarily consists of books that I've bought in January. Compared to last year, I'm doing much better on my book buying. I'm not buying as many, though this is not all-inclusive. Several of these, to include ones that aren't here, were new releases, which I said I'd make exceptions for. The final books that I will talk about was a haul related to the fact that I did 3 DNFs back to back and I knew I needed something different. Anywho, let's get started. The first book that I want to talk about is not a book that I bought this year. I bought this one last year after the New York Times came out with this list of best books of the 21st century. That is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, translated by Deborah Smith. And I mean to read this, and I plan to read this sooner rather than later. Before the nightmares began, young Hai and her husband lived an ordinary, controlled life. But the dreams, invasive images of blood and brutality, torture her, driving young Hai to purge her mind and renounce eating meat altogether. It's a small act of independence, but it interrupts her marriage and sets into motion an increasingly grotesque chain of events at home. As her husband, her brother-in-law, and her sister each fight to reassert their control, young Hai obsessively defends the choice that's become sacred to her. Soon, their attempts turn desperate, subjecting first her mind, then her body, to ever more intrusive and perverse violations, sending young Hai spiraling into a dangerous, bizarre estrangement, not only from those closest to her, but also from herself. So, they claim that this is a darkly allegorical, Kafkaesque tale of power, obsession, and one woman's struggle to break free from the violence, both outside and within her. And I'm really looking forward to this. I will probably read this before I read the next book that I did buy in January. This is also a new release. Han Kang is the winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, and that book is We Do Not Part. I want to read The Vegetarian first because this starts out kind of dreamy, it looks like. There's part 1 bird, part 2 night, part 3 flame, and then the chapters are labeled like crystals, threads, heavy snow, birds, remaining light trees. And so it begins, at least kind of dreamlike. And I guess dreams are a subject in both of these books. But let's find out what We Do Not Part is about. One winter morning, Kyung Ha receives an urgent message from her friend Inshan to visit her at a hospital in Seoul. Inshan has injured herself in an accident, and she begs Kyung Ha to return to Jeju Island, where she lives, to save her beloved pet, a white bird called Amma. A snowstorm hits the island when Kyung Ha arrives. She must reach Insan's house at all costs, but the icy wind and squalls slow her down as night begins to fall. She wonders if she will arrive in time to save the animal, or even survive the terrible cold that envelops her with every step. Lost in a world of snow, she does not yet suspect the vertiginous plunge into the darkness that awaits her at her friend's house. See? Blurring the boundaries between dream and reality, We Do Not Part powerfully illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history buried for decades, bringing to light the lost voices of the past to save them from oblivion. Not Olivia. Olivia had nothing to do with this that I know of. Both a hymn to enduring friendship and an argument for remembering, it is the story of a profound love in the face of unspeakable violence and a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. When I was in the military, I spent almost 3 years in Korea, so I am drawn to Korean literature, and I actually I traveled the whole country by myself, but I did take one vacation to Jeju Island, and it was a great vacation up until the very last day when I got food poisoning and I had to return to Suwon, which is where our base was. And so I flew to Seoul and then had to take a train all the way down to Suwon, and I was so sick. I'm sure the Koreans must have thought I was drunk because I was just draped over my suitcase, but I wanted to die. That's how bad my food poisoning was. Aside from that, I really did like the island, but I look forward to reading this, especially because it's set on Jeju Island, and this year I'm trying to read more women. Right now it's about 50-50 male authors and 50% female authors. My Booker project is going to affect that because the majority of those authors are men. Next up was also let me make sure I am correct. No, I'm probably not correct. This was a copyright 2024, so I thought it was a new release. It does not look like it. The Last House by Melissa Larson is a new release, but it's newer. Anyway, I bought it for the atmosphere on the cover. I thought I was keeping to my new release. It must have been in the new release section. I hope I haunt you. 40 years ago, a woman and her infant daughter were found buried in the Icelandic snow, lying together as though they were sleeping, except the mother's throat had been slashed and the infant drowned. The case was never solved, and there were no arrests, no convictions, just a suspicion. The husband did it. When he took his son and fled halfway across the world to California, it was proof enough of his guilt. Now, a year after his death, his granddaughter Agnes is reeling from a devastating injury, desperate to clear her grandfather's name and escape the shambles of her once stable life. Agreeing to an interview on popular true crime podcaster Nora Carver's show, Agnes hops on a last-minute flight to the remote town of Bifrost, Ireland, where Nora is staying, where Agnes's father grew up, and where, supposedly, her grandfather slaughtered his wife and daughter. But when a local girl goes missing the same weekend Agnes arrives, Agnes's and Nora's investigation is turned upside down. Suddenly, everyone in the small Icelandic town is once again a suspect. Unearthing new and old secrets alike, Agnes finds herself in a web of lies that threatens the redemption she is hell-bent on delivering, as well as her life. It doesn't have podcasts, like separate, it's not like found footage kind of podcasty. I don't see podcast scenario here, but okay, 2019, prologue 2019, and then it goes to 2019. It's all 2019. The Lost House. I feel like this may be my next read. It's cold, it's atmospheric, it's really cold right now in North Carolina. Later this week it's going to get up into the 60s, but right now it's really cold. So I feel like this would be good to read. I've got a little trepidation because I did have 3 DNFs, and if this is another DNF, I'm just going to be so disappointed in myself. And not in myself. I'm going to be disappointed in my selections. So, now we get to my book haul that I did Friday evening. When I think I must have subconsciously realized I was going to have the 3rd DNF. I got to the halfway point only by starting to skim, and I don't like to skim a book. I do it as a last resort if I'm trying to push through something, but you don't absorb as much that way. I will have talked about these already in my weekend book, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But earlier that day, My friend from work, Katie, has been reading a series backwards in order, and I saw that, and earlier that day I put the 3 books in the series in my Barnes & Noble cart, and then I promptly deleted them, and then I came home, and then, like I said, subconsciously I must have known I was going to DNF that last book, but I wasn't willing to admit it, and then finally I said, you know what, I gotta make a grocery run, I'll just run by the Barnes & Noble, and I will pick up that series. So, I am talking about the the Rome series. Is that what they're calling it? I don't know what they're calling it. Anywho, starts off with When in Rome. These are all by Sarah Adams. I don't believe I've read any of hers, but, so I'm recording this on Saturday. It'll air on Wednesday. I picked this up Friday evening after 6 o'clock. And this is how much I read of it. Twice as much as I had read in the 3rd DNF that I did. So this I'm going to finish up tonight. It is easy, it is light, it is fun. It is what I needed to process those 3 DNFs. When in Rome. Opposites certainly attract for a stranded pop star and a small-town baker in this charming slice of romance from Sarah Adams, author of The Cheat Sheet, which I've not read. Amelia Rose, known as Ray Rose to her adoring fans, is burned out from years of maintaining her Princess of Pop image. Inspired by her favorite Audrey Hepburn film, Roman Holiday, she drives off in the middle of the night for a break in Rome. Rome, Kentucky, that is. When Noah Walker finds Amelia on his front lawn in her broken-down car, he makes it clear he doesn't have the time or patience for celebrity problems. He's too busy running the pie shop his grandmother left him and reminding his nosy but lovable neighbors to mind their own damn business. Despite his better judgment, he lets her stay in his guest room, but only until her car is fixed. Then she's on her own. But Noah starts to see a different side of Ray Rose. He sees the real Amelia, kind-hearted and goofy, yet lonely from years in the public eye. He can't help but get close to her. Soon she'll have to return to her glamorous life on tour, but until then, Noah will show Amelia all the charming small-town experiences she's been missing, and she'll help him open his heart to more. Amelia can't resist falling for the cozy town and her grumpy tour guide, but even Audrey had to leave Rome eventually. Oh, Audrey Hepburn. I just got confused for a second. So, my weekend books aired on or published on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's after this will publish, which publishes on Wednesday. And in that, I will have talked about When in Rome. I am thoroughly enjoying it so far, and I can't wait to finish tonight. Next up in the series, I feel like there's going to be 4 in the series, because this series is about Rome, Kentucky, and is about Noah Walker and his 2 sisters so far, but he's got 3 sisters. There was a noise outside. So next up is Practice Makes Perfect. This is about Noah's youngest sister, I believe. I could get this totally wrong. A small-town sweetheart and an emotionally unavailable bad boy try to find some common ground in this chemistry-filled romance. Swallowed my own spit. There's probably going to be some spoilery bits in here, but I mean, come on, not really. It's a romance. We know these 2 end up together. So, Annie Walker is on a quest to find her perfect match, someone who complements her quiet life running the local flower shop in Rome, Kentucky. Did I say this is called Practice Makes Perfect? Anywho. But finding her dream man may be harder than Annie imagined. Everyone knows everyone in her hometown, and the dating prospects are getting fewer by the day. Annie, after she overhears her latest date say that she is so unbelievably boring, Annie starts to think the problem may be her. Is it too late to become flirtatious and fun like the leading ladies in our favorite romance movies? Maybe she only needs a little practice. And Annie has the perfect person in mind to be her tutor, Will Griffin. Will, the sexy, tattooed, and absolutely gorgeous bodyguard, is temporarily back in Rome, providing security for Amelia Rose as excitement builds for her upcoming marriage to Noah Walker, Annie's brother. He has one personal objective while on the job: stay away from Annie Walker and any other possible attachments in this sleepy town. But no sooner than he gets settled, Will finds himself tasked with helping Annie find the love of her life by becoming the next leading lady of Rome, Kentucky. Will wants no part in changing the sweet and lovely Annie. He knows for a fact that some stuffy, straight-laced guy won't make her happy, but he doesn't have the heart to say no. Amid steamy practice dates, fake dating, and strictly educational tutoring lessons, Annie discovers there are more layers to Will than his usual stoic attitude. As the lines of their friendship become dangerously blurred, Annie reconsiders her dream guy. Maybe her love life doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. And last up in this trilogy, which I think might be a tetralogy? I don't remember. Beg, Borrow, Steal. This is the second sister, like the middle sister of Noah's, I believe. In Beg, Borrow, or Steal, two feuding second-grade teachers and neighbors find themselves teaming up in this new rivals-to-lovers romance from the New York Times bestselling author of The Rule Book and Practice Makes Perfect. Emily Walker hates having her carefully crafted world disrupted by anyone, most of all her legendary nemesis, Jack Bennet. He's the opposite of the wonderful heroes she dreams up in her double life as a romance writer, which is why Emily was perfectly happy when Jack left Rome, Kentucky mid-school year with his fiancée. The last thing Emily saw coming was Jack's return at the start of the summer after calling off the wedding and ending his relationship, but he's here to stay as her colleague and her neighbor. Jack is glad to be back, eager to renovate his house and work on the next mystery novel under his best-selling pen name. But when he realizes he's now neighbors with the one woman who's always pushed his buttons, he discovers something he's even more excited about: thwarting Emily and her petty plans to sabotage his return. With their chemistry-fueled animosity at an all-time high, Emily accidentally sends an email to their school's principal that could reveal her secret literary side hustle. She needs to steal back her manuscript, and Jack, she hates to admit, is just the man to help her. Surprisingly, he agrees. Will their unlikely alliance put an end to their rivalry, or could it lead to a steamy plot twist they never saw coming? I am excited for this series. I'm having a really good time with it. It's not very misogynistic, no self-internalized misogyny in this one so far, but I'm going to separate them. I'm not going to read them back to back to back, probably, because I don't like to do that. It burns me out, and then I start nitpicking things. Anywho, my screen on my camera has dimmed, which means the battery is like tired of working, so I will wrap this up. I am trying to do more book reviews this year and less book hauls, but sometimes a girl just gotta buy some new books. That's it for me. Hey, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are of any of these books. Let me know down in the comments what you think of them. And as always, thank you for sticking with me on my journey, and happy reading.